Hi, my name is Jonathan Mark. I'm with Flyby News. Another update near June 2017. Bart Jordan continuing to work very hard, even though we interviewed him in September 7th, 2016. That program is being held up because we're producing other programs to go first. The last program we did was NASA's Long Hidden Warning for Mars. And in it, he briefly talks about not only what's on Cydonia and the work that he already showed us in proving that orbital positions that he gave to NASA that caught the camera of the Mars Viking mission on 35th orbit in the 72nd frame and the 70th orbit in the 13th frame. Those two pictures from those two different locations of the Cydonia region shows the 3D model of what was predicted by Bart Jordan before the mission even took off. And he received this information through channeling information and the ancient Greek language. He also had published in 1966 in the Encyclopedia Britannica the exact distances of the two moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. That and the two end daughters, Harmonia and Nomura. The Harmonia is on the fifth moon of Uranus that he helped the Voyager 2 project to take a photo of, and here it is. And Nomura, what they call a dog bone asteroid, or Cleopatra 216. This is like Harmonia spelled backwards. And if you ask me to explain, who did it, why they did it, I really can't tell you too much about it. But Bart could tell us a lot more because he knew about this when he was only 5 or 7 years old, 8 years old. And he worked on the Manhattan Project and told these people what would happen if they did split the atom in this bomb that they were developing. And he gave them the exact measures of how far they needed to be away from it and the exact chain reaction of the bomb by the millisecond. So on the 15th millisecond, there was a pure 180-degree globe that was shown. And then distortion comes about just as Bart Jordan predicted it. You should watch our other updates at Flyby News with excerpts of the September 7th, 2016 program. In this program, though, I'm going to be reading an editorial I wrote for the Greenfield Recorder in order to respond to their editorial about why our children know very little about September 11th. And they were setting up educational forums for our children, but they're not dealing with the reality of the circumstance and the reality of those attacks, which does not stand up to truth based on the official version. It's anti-science, just like the global warming hoax. People are anti-science. The measures of a building coming down near free fall speeds cannot be explained by 2 airplanes taking down 3 buildings in that manner. And so there's questions. In response to an editorial published May 5th, 2017 in the Recorder newspaper entitled "Greenfield Doing Its Part to Educate Youth on 9/11, I wrote back to a letter to the editor with this information that we should help our youth understand more about September 11th, which I agreed in that editorial. But it is not just the kids, but I found very few people willing to talk about it. This is why I founded Valley 9/11 Truth. Big question that came to us was, why would 3 steel frame high-rise buildings collapse symmetrically at near free fall speeds? By researching the facts, we realized that it's really a matter of physics, truth, and integrity to question the official version. After years of discussions and watching documentaries, we began to realize the significance of cognitive dissonance. That day changed everything, and from it, the U.S. had created its longest and ongoing war that contributed toward many conflicts around our world. Frances T. Schur, M.A., LPC, has written an in-depth analysis in her article called "Why Do Good People Become Silent or Worse About 9/11?" In this excerpt, she explains about denial and cognitive dissonance. Quote, "When we are faced with information that is too uncomfortable to accept, we reject this information outright or we minimize its importance. This is the psychological defense mechanism known as denial. We resort to denial to avoid cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable and sometimes disturbing feeling of losing our emotional equilibrium when faced with new information that challenges our worldview, or when we hold beliefs that are contradictory to known facts. The discomfort motivates us to either change our behavior, change our cognition, or justify our behavior by acquiring a secondary cognition. This dynamic is common to us all," unquote. The editorial in the Recorder did not mention any of the conspiracies or unanswered questions. This has been the policy of schools, media, and most families. But if truth can set us free, then we need to understand what is behind what is described by two co-chairs of the 9/11 Commission, Thomas Keane and Lee Hamilton, in their book, Without Precedent, The Inside Story of 9/11 Commission. They described how the commissioners found it difficult to ask tough questions about New York City fire and police department failures. And when they did, they were hammered by the media and the public. They reported on significant discrepancies in accounts provided by the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, and the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. On page 284, they wrote, quote, "The obstacles to be placed before the Commission's work had only begun. The President refused to give it adequate funding. Whereas the investigation of the Challenger disaster received $50 million, Bush promised only $3 million for the investigation of the much more deadly and complex disaster of 9/11. There is so much wrong about how these events were hushed up. Steel beams were sent immediately to China for recycling. No official tests were for explosives, though required by fire regulation. However, an independent researcher, Professor Stephen Jones, received the dust found at the World Trade Center following the collapses, which were collected by 4 independent individuals. The World Trade Center dust samples were scientifically analyzed with results published in the peer-reviewed Open Chemical Physics Journal. The title of the article sums it up: Active thermitic material discovered in dust from the 9/11 World Trade Center catastrophe. I can almost understand why so few go down the rabbit hole and see the missing gaps in the official version. There are consequences to realize in that case. Our view of our world changes, our nation, its foreign policies. The Twin Towers were struck while I was working on a new issue for Flyby News regarding peace in space. With a false flag waving before us, President Bush increased threats to our civil liberties via the so-called Patriot Act. He also terminated the anti-ballistic missile treaty with Russia to enable offensive weapons to enter outer space. As an independent citizen journalist, I realized that peace cannot happen without truth or real justice. Litmus Tests for Truth and Transformation is an article I wrote that describes this and offers links to resources on a labyrinth of deceptions, and shares an idea on how we, the people, can reclaim our government and protect our world. Instead of supplementing an educational experience that may continue a deception, our educators must consider ways to learn and show kids how to critically think, and not through repetitive conditioning on what to think. Questioning what really happened on September 11, 2001, and documenting the abuse since that tragic day could provide an opportunity to begin a healing process for our community and world, taking vital steps toward truth, justice, and peace.
Eisenhower warned us that the greatest threat to American security came from
the military-industrial complex.
and Kennedy heard him. And then he called on the world to strengthen the United Nations organization, to help them not just to rein in the military-industrial complex, but to eliminate it completely.
Together we shall save our planet, or together we shall perish in its flames.
As it all falls down, the house of cards, you see them running away from the wall, leaving you for dead. Statements all in red. It's your money they loved most of all. You trust the men in suits, think they're better than you, then you choose to give your power away. Take a look around, see what that's done. It's made this world we live in today. Modern day Nero, fiddle and play. Flames burn even higher. Media play my emotional strings. Fan the coals, feed the fire. Ignorance is bliss, the song of the fool. The wise man knows his own mind. The holy war is over when you no longer hate. There's no battle to be fought outside. As they all fell down, you could hear the sound of angels crying. As they all turned away, you could hear the sound as the angels cried. Everyone is you, you are all one, no better or worse than the fool. The one voice heard in the presence of love is the one without the power to wound. Stand alone in the dark, nothing will help in this dream of being apart. The only light to shine on the path ahead is the love that's inside your heart. Keep your eye on the small flame that burns within. Darkness will help you understand the pain of those that can see no light. Choose again, I know you can. And I only want the power that makes me appear as nothing in the eyes of you. I only want the peace that no one can take. Let the battle be fought by the fools as they all fell down. You could hear the sound of angels crying as they all turned away. You could hear the sound